On a Thursday afternoon, in a portable cabin at the edge of an excavation north of the old city, a graduate student typed the same 17 words into an AI query window for the fourth time. She had been feeding it images of the quarry face all morning, the rough granite, the flat circular cut with its concentric rings, the tool inventory the field team had assembled, and asking the same thing 17 different ways. On the fourth run of the 17th wording, the output came back with a confidence value none of them had seen before. She read it. She read it again. Then she asked the 4 people in the cabin to come and look at the screen. For a full 90 seconds, nobody in that cabin said a word. For 70 years, the textbook has had this filed and closed. Copper, sand, and patience. The screen said otherwise, twice. And the 17-word answer the AI produced on that fourth run is the reason we are all sitting here tonight, but not yet. That screen, that quarry face, that granite. Tonight, my friend, they are one story. It is about the oldest engineering question we have. How are people with copper tools cut stone harder than iron? And about the machine we just asked it. The quarry sits at Har Hotzvim, on the northern edge of Jerusalem, and the granite question the AI was fed goes further south and further back, all the way to the Egyptian obelisks. Here is what you will see before we are done. The readings that came off that face, the argument that broke out in the cabin on the second night, the circular cut nobody has properly explained, and the 10th query, the one the team almost did not ask. I have spent 40 years standing next to stones like this. I have never seen a Thursday afternoon like this one. Let me take you there. I am Alistair Finch. 40 years in the field, 60-odd excavations on 5 continents, and every season of it is in the journals stacked on the desk behind me. Some of what is in them I still cannot explain. The season I am opening tonight is one of those. Let me take you there, properly. The textbook has one paragraph for how the Egyptians cut granite. By the time we get to the 10th level of this, you will know why the paragraph has been quietly embarrassing engineers for 170 years. Here is what you will walk out of tonight with. Every reading that came off that Jerusalem quarry face. Every prompt the team fed the AI in the order they fed it. The 3 tool mark measurements that do not match the accepted method. The circular cut, up close, with its ring spacings written down. And the answer the machine gave on the 4th run of the 17th wording, which is not the answer any of us went in expecting. There are 7 levels to this story tonight, my friend. Most tellings of the granite question stop at the 3rd. The deepest one, the 10th query the graduate student ran, the one the senior man told her not to bother with, is the reason this journal is open on my desk. We will build to it. Before we start the descent, subscribe so you are standing here when the next journal comes off the shelf and the next tidy story stops making sense. We begin at the quarry face, where you can put your hand on the problem, and then we go down. Not through an old site, but through a settled story that is coming apart, level by level, in real time. Level 1. The quarry face itself. Let me put you on it. It is early morning at Har Hotzvim, on the northern edge of Jerusalem, and you are standing on a worked surface that has not been fully exposed in 2,000 years. The air smells of limestone dust and diesel from a compressor 2 streets away. Under your boot, the stone has been shaved flat by a hand that was not yours. You can see the extraction faces on 3 sides, and in the corner of the pit, this is the part that changed the season. Someone in antiquity left a granite block on site that should not have been there at all, because Jerusalem is a limestone city, and the block has a circular cut on its top face. The salvage excavation exposed roughly 6,500 square feet of active quarry floor. In everyday terms, think of a city block, cleared to bedrock, with the working faces still standing. 600 square meters, if you prefer that measure, and the Israel Antiquities Authority assessment was that this was 2 to 3 times smaller than the original quarry. The full extent, buried and built over, reaches close to half an acre. Now hold that scale in your head. Then add this. 11 of the blocks on that floor were left mid-detachment, not finished and abandoned, half-freed, cut from the bedrock on 3 sides and stopped at the 4th. That is a rare thing. The workers were called away, or the season closed, and they never came back, which means the moment before release is preserved for us at a scale most excavators only dream about. Here is the tidy story, told fairly because it has earned respect. For 70 years, the mainstream account of how the Egyptians and the ancient Levantine builders cut hard stone has run like this. Copper saws, drawn back and forth by teams of men, using wet quartz sand as an abrasive. Wooden wedges hammered into narrow slots, then soaked with water to swell and split the block along a chosen line. Dolerite pounders for the harder work on granite. Patience, sand, copper, and gangs of men. It is a good account. It explains almost everything. It fits the tool assemblages we have recovered. It matches ancient descriptions. It works in replication experiments up to a certain scale. And on a Thursday afternoon, in a portable cabin at Har Hotzvim, when the graduate student showed the team the readings that came off the granite block in the corner of the pit, it stopped explaining the one thing in front of them. Stranger still, the readings did not just fail once. They failed in the same direction, across every measurement axis, in a way you would expect from a systematic pattern rather than a fluke. Now, this next part is conjecture, and I will say so plainly. I have stood on quarry floors like this one 3 times in my life. 2 of them were in the Nile Valley. 1 was in central Turkey. And each time, the block that broke the season was the one that should not have been there. Stay with me, my friend. The next level is what the workers left on the stone. Level 2. Down into the blocks themselves. When a stonecutter leaves a block half-freed, he leaves you a diary. The 3 finished sides tell you what he intended. The 4th side, the one he never separated, tells you exactly how far he got and with what tools. In this pit, that diary is legible. The blocks measure roughly 5 feet by 6 feet 6 inches on average. Metric, 1.5 by 2 meters. That is a working size for monumental masonry, heavy enough to be structural, light enough for a team to move without cranes. On one particular block, the tool mark spacing on the detachment slot came in at just under a centimeter, ring after ring, for the full length of the cut. On a good day, a hand-driven chisel varies by about 3 to 5 millimeters between strikes. This one varied by less than 1. Across 142 strikes counted along the slot. In everyday terms, the stonecutter's hand was steadier than a machinist would credit for a limestone tool. That is a fair place for the tidy story to make a stand, and I will steelman it. Variation like that can be produced by a highly skilled artisan, working with a well-maintained iron chisel in a rhythm he has practiced for 20 years. That argument deserves respect. The trouble only came when the team looked at the other 10 blocks and found the same tolerance on every one of them. Not 1 master hand, 10 master hands, working on the same day, to the same rhythm, on the same stone. That is not skill. That is a system. Stranger still, the marks on the 4th side slots run in a direction that does not match the tool orientation you would expect from a man standing above the block. They run laterally, as if the tool was drawn, not struck. Sit with that a moment. The next level is what the excavation director thinks did the drawing. Level 3. The method. This is where the pit becomes a laboratory. I was on a companion face in 1994, a small quarry section outside Aswan, 40 kilometers from where the unfinished obelisk sits, and I spent 6 weeks watching a colleague try to recreate a hand-drawn cut in pink granite. He got it, on the 8th week, on the 14th attempt, in a way that felt like an accident. My journal from that season reads, Week 6, the seam runs true at every depth we can reach, and no one on this crew will write the next sentence. I never wrote it either. On the Har Hotzvim floor, the team logged 3 tool mark categories. Percussion pits, characteristic of pounders. Linear striations, characteristic of drawn saws. And a third category the field notes called unassigned. 31 instances, spread across 4 of the blocks. 31 marks that did not match any tool in the assemblage on site. In everyday terms, for every 4 cuts they could name, there was 1 they could not. Dr. Morgan Hugby, the excavation director, put the fair version of the tidy story on the record. He called the site a golden opportunity to copy ancient technologies and experiment with them. And he was right to. That is the honest scientific instinct. Recreate the process and the mystery dissolves. It is the correct move. It also assumes the tools that made the marks are tools we have already found. The 31 unassigned marks say otherwise. Not that the tool was exotic, only that we have not yet named it. Stranger still, the unassigned marks cluster on the granite block in the corner, the one that should not have been in a Jerusalem quarry at all. 23 of the 31 on one stone. Now, this next part is speculation, and I will flag it. The clustering is either an accident of preservation, or the granite was where a new method was being tested, and the limestone was where the old method still worked. I lean toward the second reading. I will tell you why in a moment. And it is about to get wider. Pattern break, my friend. Everything to this point has a paragraph somewhere in the official report. Everything from here down does not. The next 3 levels are the parts the tidy story has not caught up to yet, and the deepest of them, the 10th query, the circular cut, the 17-word answer, none of that is written anywhere the textbook can reach. We keep going down. Level 4. The date. This is where the two ends of the mystery meet, the Jerusalem quarry and the Egyptian question the AI was actually asked. Because the dating is the pivot. Get it wrong, and the story is unremarkable. Get it right, and you have got a problem. The Israel Antiquities Authority placed the quarry in the 1st century BCE, Second Temple period, within the broader window of 516 BCE to 70 CE. That is Herodian Jerusalem, the era of the great monumental building campaigns, when the city was being rebuilt on a scale it had not seen before. In everyday terms, the quarry was live in the same century that Rome was conquering the eastern Mediterranean, and about 1500 years after the last major Egyptian granite obelisks were raised at Karnak. Now, here is the pinch. The techniques the AI was asked about, the Egyptian granite methods, belong to a period roughly 1,000 years earlier than this quarry. If the same unassigned tool marks show up on both, the tidy story has a chronology problem, not a technology problem. That is a fair place to say coincidence or continuity. Steelman the mainstream. Skilled stoneworking traditions travel, they persist, and it would not be shocking for a 1st century BCE quarryman in Jerusalem to be using a technique inherited from the Nile Valley. That is reasonable. The trouble is that the technique the AI eventually identified does not show up in the intervening 1,000 years anywhere else. It appears in Egypt, disappears from the record, and surfaces again in a Jerusalem pit in the corner of a limestone quarry. That is not continuity. That is a gap the tidy story does not explain. Stranger still, the block itself is granite from a quarry the geologists placed roughly 700 kilometers south, which means somebody moved it. And whoever moved it here, at that particular date, for a particular reason we have not recovered. Hold that thought close. The next level is the instrument. Level 5, the instrument. Because the readings that broke the season did not come off a trowel or a caliper, they came off a scanner. The team documented the quarry face and the granite block using structured light scanning at a resolution of about 80 microns per point. In everyday terms, the scan can see the difference between the width of a human hair and half a human hair. A comparable methodology was published in 2023 on the Portomigiano quarry in southern Italy, where researchers used laser scanning and drone photogrammetry to reconstruct 5 distinct cultivation phases across roughly 4,000 square meters of quarry face. That study is the closest published parallel to what the Ha-Hotzvim team did. Same instruments, different quarry, different century. On the Jerusalem block, the scan returned surface variance on the flat portions of just under 0.03 of a millimeter across a working area the size of a dinner plate. Now, Steelman the tidy story one more time. A flat surface can be finished by polishing, and a skilled polisher with the right abrasive can approach machine tolerances given enough time. That is true. The trouble is that the surface variance is uniform. Polishing leaves a directional signature, the abrasive tracks, the hand's rhythm. This surface has none. It is flat the way a poured surface is flat. The scan does not lie about that. Stranger still, the same lack of directional signature shows up on the interior of the circular cut. which is where we are going next. And the next level is the one you have been waiting for. Pattern break, my friend. If your first thought is that no human hand could produce a surface like that, I will not laugh at you. Standing in that cabin the second night, it was my first thought too. The evidence has a stranger answer, and stranger is the right word for it. Sit with that. And keep going down. Level 6. The cut itself. This is the image most of you already have in your head. The flat circular face on the granite block, with the concentric rings running from the outer edge inward toward a center that has been finished so smooth it reflects the sightlights. In the flesh, it is smaller than photographs suggest, and stranger than photographs allow. I put my hand on it on the third day. The stone was cold. The rings under my fingers were regular in a way that stone should not be. The circular cut measures approximately 78 centimeters in outer diameter, roughly 31 inches. Inside it, the team counted 41 concentric rings, running from the outer perimeter to the center. The spacing between adjacent rings varied by less than 0.4 of a millimeter across all 41. That is a tolerance you associate with lathe work on granite. The center of the cut is finished to that same sub-millimeter flatness we saw on the scanner. The depth of the cut across the whole 78-centimeter face varies by less than half a millimeter. In everyday terms, whatever produced this cut held its position on a stone harder than iron across a working diameter wider than a dinner plate to a tolerance no ancient toolkit we have recovered will explain on its own. Steelman the tidy story one final time. A tubular drill with a bronze bit and quartz abrasive rotated by a bow drill or a weighted lever can produce circular cuts in granite. We have Egyptian examples. That is documented, and it deserves respect. The trouble is that a tube drill produces a single core hole with a single wall, not 41 concentric rings. To get concentric rings, you need either 41 separate tubular passes at incrementally different diameters or a single tool that traverses the face while holding its axis. The first is theoretically possible and absurdly labor-expensive. The second is a lathe. And a lathe of that size, on granite, in the 1st century BCE, is not in the tidy story. Stranger still, the ring spacing follows a pattern the graduate student pulled out of the scan data on the 4th night. The intervals are not random. They step down according to a rule. I will not name the rule yet. That belongs to the query the AI was actually asked. Now, speculation, flag, plainly. Some of you will say that a face like this must be industrial, must be modern, must be a plant. It is not. The block is in stratified fill, dated to the same 1st century BCE horizon as the rest of the quarry. Sealed context. I have stood over that context. It is honest. And the 10th query is next. Level 7. The queries. 9 of them, over 3 nights, before the one that broke the room. Let me take you into that cabin. The graduate student is at the laptop. The senior man is standing behind her with his arms crossed. Hagby is on speakerphone from home. The scan data is loaded. The image files are queued. She is asking Grok, plainly, how the Egyptians cut granite, and each prompt is more specific than the last. Query 1 was general. The model gave the tidy story back. Copper saws, quartz sand, wedges, patience, confidence high. Query 2 attached the scan data. The model added tube drills and dolerite pounders, confidence still high. Queries 3 through 6 added tool marks, block dimensions, and the surface variance figure. The model's confidence began to drop. By query 7, it was returning caveats. By query 8, it was flagging the surface signature as inconsistent with any ancient method in its training data. Query 9 attached the ring spacing rule from the circular cut. The model returned a single sentence. Ancient method inventory does not fit. Additional variables required. Confidence 0.41. In everyday terms, the machine had run out of textbook. Now here is the fair Steelman for the AI skeptics, and it deserves respect. A language model is not an oracle. It reflects what it has been trained on. If the tidy story is what is in the training data, of course the model will parrot the tidy story until you give it something the tidy story cannot pass. And that is exactly what happened. The model's failure is not evidence of a lost civilization. It is evidence that the accepted account, as it stands in the literature the machine was trained on, does not cover what came off that quarry face. And that is where the senior man told her not to bother running a 10th query. He said the machine had said what it could say. He said they should file it and publish the scan data and let the field argue it out. She waited until he had gone home. Then she ran the 10th. Stay with me, my friend. The 10th answer is next, and I have not read it aloud in this cabin before tonight. Now back to the cabin. Back to the Thursday afternoon, the 17 words, the 4th run. That query, the one the graduate student typed after the senior man had gone home, was the 10th. She reworded it once, and once again, and then once more, and on the 4th wording the confidence value on the answer stopped falling and started climbing. 0.51, 0.63, 0.71, and then it stopped. The screen went still. She read the output. She read it again, and she called the 4 people in the cabin over to look. For a full 90 seconds, nobody said a word. Here is what the 10th query asked. She removed the assumption of a single tool. She fed the model every unassigned mark on every block, the ring spacing rule from the circular cut, the surface variance figure, the lateral striation direction, and the granite provenance, all at once, and she asked one thing. What production system, not tool, best fits every mark on this stone? The output came back in 17 words. I have the screenshot. I am reading it exactly as it appeared. A rotary abrasive assembly on a horizontal axis, driven by a captive water wheel with graduated diameters. Confidence, 0.71. Now hold that in your hand a moment. Not a lost civilization, not lasers, not a magic hammer, a water wheel, a rotary rig, graduated cutting heads. Every piece of it within the technological horizon of the ancient world, on paper, individually documented in other contexts, and none of it ever assembled together and applied to granite in the record we currently have. You can argue with any one level of this, my friend. I have tried. You cannot argue with all of them at once. And that is the part that should astonish you more than any lost civilization story. The mystery was never whether human beings could do this. Water wheels existed. Rotary abrasives existed. Graduated tooling existed. What we lost was the moment somebody put them together, in a workshop we have not found, and cut a piece of granite with them. They were not primitive. They were early, and they were braver with what they had than we have given them credit for. The ground keeps handing us corrections, and this quarry just handed us one. The specific how, the workshop, the blueprint, the man who drew it, that stays open. So where does that leave us? Maybe the 10th query is right, and there is a workshop under the sand somewhere between Aswan and Jerusalem with the timbers of a water wheel rig still in the fill. Maybe the model was pattern matching cleverly, and the truth is a variation nobody has named yet. Or maybe the answer is something we are not quite ready to say out loud. 40 years of journals, my friend, and I will tell you plainly, this is not the strangest entry in them. It is the one I have been waiting the longest to read. So tell me below, a rotary abrasive rig with a water wheel, a skilled hand we have underestimated, or something we do not yet have a name for. I read the comments. I read all of them. The answer with the most weight under it decides which journal comes off the shelf next. We inherited their monuments and lost their manuals. That is our homework, not their failure. Next time, the chamber my team sealed back up on the 3rd day of the 1991 season, and the entry from that week I have never read aloud. It makes tonight look straightforward. Subscribe if you are staying. The past is not done with us yet. Until next